right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today and also watching either here on Zoom webinar or on Facebook Live. My name is Nia Alvarez Mapp. I am the Social Action Chair for Manhattan Section National Council of Negro Women and Next Gen Chair of the New York Branch National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Welcome again to another fantastic Candidates Forum of Greater Harlem Unites Next Gen. This time we're doing public advocates. It's so exciting for us to, again, with the rules of fairness and having everyone have a better understanding of who is their potential candidates. We are another excellent addition to our series, and we're supposed to have two excellent candidates and public advocates hopeful today. And as always, I'm forever grateful to Ms. Ayana Harry of Pix 11 who's joining us. This is going to be so exciting, and it's going to be a very simple street, and as well as our co-sponsor of Educated Voting, Annette Nicole, that's going to give another wonderful lesson of ranked choice voting. So guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy, and I'm going to move it over with Diamond today from of our sponsor NCNW to do more of the formatting and also who's going to be moderating for us. Diamond?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Greater Harlem United Next Gen's Candidate Forum this evening. It is a great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Ayana Harry. Emmy Award-winning journalist Ayana Harry has covered significant local, national, international news stories for over 1 decade. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Ayana is television news reporter for the station she grew up watching, Pix 11. Her reporting focuses on City Hall politics and criminal justice. At Pix 11, Ayana was the first television journalist to cover Eric Gardner's police-involved death and continues to follow developments. In 2017, Ayana was one of the first reporters on the ground as a deadly terror attack unfolded along Manhattan's West Side Highway. Ayana joined Pix 11 from WTIC TV in Hartford, Connecticut, where she covered Sandy Hook's school shooting, providing live reports from Newtown as the event unfolded. Ayana's career began at ABC News in New York, where she worked her way up as from the intern desk assistant, ultimately becoming field producer. She was a part of a Go team that was dispatched around the country to coordinate network coverage after major breaking news for Good Morning America, World News Tonight, and Nightline. While at ABC News, Ayana covered presidential campaigns, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the Bernie Madoff case, and the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. A graduate of Princeton University, Ayana holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Politics. Welcome, welcome, Ayana Harry, as she will be our moderator for this evening.
Thank you so much for the kind welcome. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome, Ayana. It is a pleasure to have you. We thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Good to see you. Before we get started, I would like to just go over the format for this evening. We will have a person that will serve as our timekeeper as we go through our round with our candidates for this evening. The round will go as follows. We will have opening remarks, which will be a 2-minute long statement, 3 prepared questions with 60-second long answers, 4 Q&As from the audience, and 30-second closing statements. Deneen Donnelly will serve as our timekeeper for the evening, giving time checks throughout the times in which our candidates will give responses. We thank you so much for joining us this evening, and do enjoy this evening's forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diamond, for that kind introduction and for getting us all set up with the rules for the evening. I believe we're pretty much ready to dive in. I know Theo is here, and hi, how are you? How's it going, Theo?
Hi, Ayana. Very nice meeting you. I'm doing well. How about you?
I am doing well as well. So I believe you are the only candidate here right now. And I believe we're going to just keep moving forward and dive in with giving you an opportunity to do your 2-minute opening statement. It looks like you're benefiting from the spotlight tonight, perhaps.
Well, I have a boulevard. I'll take it. So my name is Theo Chino. I grew up in France and I grew up here in New York and in Dominican Republic. I am the grandson of the Asian founder of the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE. I am an Afro-Latino Dominican. I was a Bitcoin small business entrepreneur back in 2013, 2014. And I am also an HPD victim. So I am running for public advocate because I believe this is the best office in the land in New York City to go after the corruption that is plaguing many of the different agencies run by the mayor of New York, namely HPD, NYCHA, the Department of Homeless Services, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope this forum tonight will be for the youth and the opportunity for Harlem youth, actually. So I hope that we'll be able to have a very good discussion on what we need to do and what the Office of Public Advocate can do to make sure all the youth from 18 to 35 can have here in New York.
Well, thank you so much for that, Theo. And thank you for reminding me that, yes, this is a forum that is completely organized and put together by young people from Harlem and throughout New York City. And I'm so appreciative of their invitation to do this every week. And I understand that we have another candidate coming on in 2 minutes. I'm not sure if the organizers would like to hold off a little bit or if we should dive into the first prepared question. Let's move in. Let's move along to the first prepared question.
I'll take the first question then.
Yes, we'll get going. You're here, Theo. We appreciate you. And so we're going to go ahead and dive in. And again, I thank the organizers of this forum because they have written the questions and these are the topics that are really, on their hearts and on their minds. So thank you for that. So many questions. What are your thoughts? And again, you'll have 60 seconds for this. What are your thoughts on a non-police response in New York City for mental health crises, like in other cities? So what are your thoughts on a non-police response in New York City when someone is dealing with a mental health crisis?
Absolutely. There is no other thing. The police shouldn't be responding as first responder on mental health question. I mean, I'm going to talk about my cousin. He had schizophrenia and he passed away. But I remember when I saw him and I had to call the first responder, it was in Pennsylvania, and I had to hold the police 4 blocks away because I was so afraid for him. And I understand that many families don't know how to sometimes deal with mental health, that he explode and they call 911 and the first thing they do is bring the police into the equation. No, we need to have other first responder who are more geared toward mental health people, mental health.
10 seconds.
Well, we need something else than the police. So absolutely, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Theo. My next question for you is, the Public Advocate's Office puts out a list every single year of some of the city's worst landlords. Every year, the Public Advocate's Office puts out a list of the city's worst landlords. What can the Public Advocate's Office do to ensure that the same landlords don't continue to end up on that list year after year?
Well, the city of New York has many tools for that. There is the tax lien process that has been co-opted. There is many ways that we can ensure that the worst landlord actually become good landlord. And one of the proposal I had is I am 100% for the total rent stabilization for the whole type of rent for the whole city of New York. No more market rate here and there. The second thing we need to do is have a license for landlord. If you want to be a landlord, you need to go to the training. You need to show that you have the minimum basic knowledge to be a landlord and a good landlord. And right now, anyone who says it's private property so I can rent it to whoever I want, No, we need to have things like that. So those are two examples that I can use as a public advocate to ensure that the landlord become good landlord.
Thank you so much, Theo. And before I dive in with my next question for you, I just want to remind everyone who is watching us, everyone who's logged in, that if you have a question for Theo, we would love to ask it to him. We have a Q&A portion of the evening, so feel free to use the chat function or also the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Type in your question. I will certainly see it, and we will get those questions over to Theo. So Theo, my next prepared question for you, and you'll have 60 seconds for this question as well. Tell us about a personal experience in your life that inspired you to want to run for public office. Share with us a personal experience, something that happened in your life that inspired you to want to run for public office, for public advocate.
Save the bathtub where I grew up and I bathed when I was a baby. I live here in Hamilton Heights, and the building was one of the worst building in New York City. That was the worst real estate example in New York City. Since 1914, this building, the tenant has been rent striking, has been doing a lot of things. And I saw the corruption when in the 90s, they were supposed to give the building to the tenant. My mother, for example, organized the building to get the building into an HDFC. Suddenly they say, no, you couldn't do that. You're not qualified enough. You're minority. You don't know how to run a building of 10th floor. We need to give you a sponsor. That was in 1999. Today we're in 2021, and that sponsor has not converted the building. And that experience, and I have seen our sponsor stealing building in Brooklyn, like in the third-party transfer process. They stole many buildings from Black owner down in Brooklyn, like right now, Riceboro in Bushwick. All those stories added one after the other. And every time we talked about it, talked to our politician, talked to the mayor, talked to everybody, we were canceled. It's not possible. We were conspiracy theorists. It's not possible that a nonprofit.
Time.
So
that's what inspired me to really want to do it.
Well, thank you. We see a lot of passion in your answer there, and we appreciate that. My next question for you, Theo, is what does defunding the police mean to you, and do you agree with calls to defund the police? So I'd ask that you answer that just at the beginning, say yes or no. Do you agree with defunding the police, and if so, what does that look like for you?
For me, defunding the police, first of all, it depends on what is your cultural background. For Black American, defunding the police is the equivalent for Latino of abolish ICE. For a white American, it will be basically removing the money, demilitarizing the police, so they become a human force, where CPR really means CPR. And right now, defunding the police, there is a problem. We need to defund the police. We need to take their budget of $6 billion and lower it. Figure out how to make police officer more part of the community. And the first thing we need to do actually is for the calling for the resignation of the PBA, the Police Benevolent Union, Pat Lynch. He needs to resign with the board, and the public advocate would organize a fair election for their union, so the rank and file and the board look like the rank and file, because right now they don't.
I appreciate that answer, Theo. Another question for you. Where were you during the height of the pandemic last year? So talking about March, April, May, when things were kind of really scary here in New York City during that height of the pandemic, where were you? And if you were in New York City, what did you do to help benefit the residents of New Yorkers?
So I am a New Yorker. I was in my apartment and I was confined. Basically, I live in my apartment. And during that time, actually, I was helping Paperboy Love Prince for his run for Congress in District 7. So I was the computer guy behind his candidacy when he was crossing the bridge with George Floyd's brother, when he was supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. I was behind the scene with the computer, helping him with the whole team of volunteers that were driving his candidacy. So that's what I was doing during the pandemic. And I was wearing my mask, 2 masks.
That's right. One mask, two masks. We always are trying to be safe. So, Theo, we do have a question from the audience, which I am excited to ask you. It's from Dr. Gary Alfium. And he said, how would you address the privatization of public space, lack of access for youth services, like the issue at the New York City Fort Washington Armory? So the question is asking, how would you address the privatization of public space and the lack of access for youth services?
So the public advocate has many tools for that. And this is actually a problem in my neighborhood. The Washington Fort Armory is on 168, 30 blocks from where I live, next community board. The problem with the armory is that everybody forgot who was the real owner of the armory. The armory belonged to the city of New York. It is managed by the Department of Homeless Services, with, when it's not in use by the community, to be managed by the Department of Park Department. What has happened is the Armory Foundation was given the big license, and they basically evicted every other nonprofit that made the Armory successful. So the Armory had so many little nonprofits that had nothing with tracking, and basically they evicted everybody illegally. And so what I would do is literally give the community the Armory and everything that is public back to the community, so they can figure out with their community board how to make something better locally.
Theo, talk to me about why running for this office is so important to you personally, and what are the items or the topics that you would dive in and want to tackle first?
The first, it's important for me for two reasons. The public advocate is the chair of what is called COPIC, is the communication information, is basically everything that is the communication data of New York City is handled by a commission chaired by the public advocate. That commission has met once every 3 years, and I'm still waiting for Jumaane to get together and meet on that commission. The second thing is privacy is going to be the 21st century version of civil rights. So as a computer engineer, I understand very well what privacy is in the realm of digital rights. And COPIC is the body in New York that would be in charge of making sure that Facebook, Google, Apple do not go overwhelm people using the data of the city of New York for their own benefit, like Uber, who charge 30% to taxi driver just to do a credit card thing. That's outrageous. I mean, there is so much.
Theo, thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking the time and answering all these questions. I will remind everybody who's logged on, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat or use the Q&A function. And I appreciate the viewer for sending in the first question. Theo, question for you. And again, thank you for being so patient and so generous with your time and answering all of my questions, because as you can see, I have a lot of them.
I wish there was the other side here. I mean, literally, I mean, I am surprised.
Well, we're going to make it work, Theo, and people will get an opportunity to hear from you. So from A to F, how would you grade New York City's coronavirus vaccine rollout? Do you give them an A? Do you give them an F? A grade in between? And explain why.
In terms of I think from what I hear in the street from people who are getting vaccinated themselves, once they get their appointment, I would give them an A, because everybody's behind, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. When it comes to the logistic from the politician telling us we need to use a website, the website sends you to private company, Walgreens, you go back and forth, and at the end of the day, you don't know how to get an appointment. I'm still waiting to try to get an appointment for myself, and that hasn't happened. And that part, I give a big F. So once you get into the system and get your appointment, you get an A. Getting the appointment, you get an F.
Mixed grade. I like that. You're a hard grader on some points. One more question from the viewers, and then we're going to go ahead and let you give a 30-second close. So Carmita Morgan Randall asks, mental health services for individuals and families are limited. How would you change that? And we touched on this a bit before, but will you endorse a mental health 911 system? So again, mental health services for individuals and families are limited. How would you change that? And will you endorse a mental health 911 system? Again, you have 60 seconds.
Of course, I will implement another number for mental health issue where family can call. The other thing we need to work is on the stigma attached to mental health in many immigrant community who still believe mental health is solvable without talking to other people, to the professional. It is taboo. We need to work on removing the stigma of mental health. I mean, unfortunately, what happened in Texas a few days ago was horrific in the Bangladeshi community, where two young people who were depressed managed to kill their family, even though they were followed by mental health professional in some way. So there is a lot to do in that domain. I am lucky to be married to a wonderful psychiatrist. So I do get a legs up on the topic, and I will do everything possible so we can have mental health, not only because we don't have enough psychiatrists around in the first place. So we need to be creative in figuring out how to empower people who are not psychiatrists or nurse practitioner to become helper in the fight in removing and helping people with mental health issues. Because it's not that easy as 1, 2, 3, but it is solvable.
Thank you, Theo. And at this point, we will give you a 30 seconds to give your closing statement, and then we will wrap up this portion of the debate.
Well, it wasn't really a debate. I was all by
Of the
myself.
forum.
Oh, hi, Jumaane. Here he is. Greetings.
Peace.
Okay, Theo, you have your 30 seconds.
Oh, well, I'll wait for Jumaane. I mean, I'll wait for him to catch up because I would like to have some sort of back and forth, if possible.
We can modify the format, sure. So what we'll do then is we will give Jamani an opportunity to give his 2-minute opening statement. And then after that, Jamani, we did a few minutes of prepared questions, and I'll ask you some of the same questions, and want to give, just stress for everybody who's watching that this is not a debate. This is more of a forum and a dialogue and an opportunity to hear the different perspectives of the different candidates. So thank you so much for joining us, Jamani, and we'd like to invite you to chat with us for 2 minutes with an opening statement.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ayanna. Thank you, everybody who was here. Good to see everyone. Good to see you, Theo. As was mentioned, my name is Jamani Williams. I'm currently the public advocate for the city of New York, seeking to be reelected for my first term. Folks have probably realized there's been a few elections for this position when our sister Tish James was elevated to Attorney General. It opened up the position of public advocate. It's been a strange about 2 years now that we've been in office. When we got elected, we had to staff up because Tish was nice enough to take about 90% of the staff to the Attorney General's office. So we had to spend some time staffing up, which we did. We have a pretty good team. And as we mentioned on our campaign, we now have a very strong, robust community engagement unit. The former public advocate was very focused on litigation as an attorney. I'm really focused on community engagement as a community organizer. And that's where we put a lot of our energy and resources into. Since that time in the past 2 years, I'm very proud of the work that we've done in reorganizing the office. It was our partnership with the city council. We've actually passed more pieces of legislation in the past 2 years than any other public advocate. We've put out about 10 reports and white papers, and really helped move the conversation. Most importantly, I think we've elevated some conversations and lifted up some folks who may not have been lifted up in their time. We have a very strong presence, and there's an important recovery that has to happen now. We want to make sure that we're not going back to normal, because normal didn't work for most folks. So I think it means we have to have a public advocate who's shown not only the ability and the courage to speak up against the powerful presence that are there, but actually get some things done.
Fantastic. So Jamani, I'll ask you a few of the questions that we asked Theo earlier, and I'll give you 60 seconds to respond to each of the questions, just so that everyone who's watching can get an opportunity to hear some of the differences between both of your positions. So Jamani, from A to F, how would you grade the city's coronavirus vaccination efforts? A to F, what grade do you give the city on rolling out the vaccine? You have 60 seconds.
On the rollout, it was worse than F. So it was pretty bad. It's starting to get a little bit better now. And so we're happy about that. There's still a tremendous long way to go, especially when it comes to communities of more color, Black and brown. From infection to injection, those communities have gotten the worst ends of everything. And we saw that with the vaccine. What made things even worse was that we had a lot of months to plan to get it right. And so it was just even more disappointing, both in the city and the state level, to see them just fail at this. And again, we're getting better now. The disparity is still great in terms of who's getting it. That's starting to get smaller, which is good. But we're not where we need to be. And what's even worse, we're opening up the state a little bit too quickly, and we're hoping we can help slow that down.
Thank you. Another question that was posed earlier. So the Public Advocate's Office regularly puts out a list of some of the worst landlords in New York City. What can the Public Advocate do to ensure that landlords, some of the most egregious landlords, don't continue to end up on that list year after year?
Well, we actually have some pieces of legislation in the City Council now to try to see if we can get some teeth to the landlord list that's there. As mentioned, we put it out 2 years in a row. We're going to put it out again. We've augmented it to try to see if we can update it mid-year to give incentive for some landlords to get off. It is working though, thankfully. We have people who are calling us on a regular basis, trying really badly to get the name off, because more and more banks are actually looking at the list when they're dealing with their funding for these landlords. But we really do need to get some ways to put some teeth. And I wish we were able to do something even more. At some point, we have to take these buildings from these owners who go do this on a regular basis.
Thank you. Next question for you, Jamani. What are your thoughts on a non-police response in New York City for mental health, the way it happens in some other cities? Again, what are your thoughts on a non-police response when a person is dealing with a mental health crisis?
I don't know if that's can answer in 60 seconds. I invite folks to go to advocate.nyc.gov. That was actually one of the first reports that we put out, how to deal with mental health in the city. From soup to nuts, we've been failing. We're actually feeling some of the effects of that on the ground. But we do know that this is not a police issue. People who are in acute mental health crisis actually need mental health, a public health response. And so we are pushing legislation to try to make that happen. It is a difficult discussion, but we've seen places like Eugene, Oregon, where we see different models that work. Some of those places have a more homogeneous population. So it's gets a little bit different in New York City, where sometimes the police force doesn't look like the people they're responding to. So we have to account for that as well. But there are a lot of good things we can do. I think we're in the right direction. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time and money doing the wrong things. And so my hope is very shortly, based on the work of so many advocates, and including our office, we can get it done and really remove police from the initial response and those kinds of calls.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll bring Theo in, and I have a question from the Q&A. Actually, the Q&A looks like it's filling up with questions from folks who are listening in. So I'll give Theo 60 seconds to answer the question, and then Jumaane 60 seconds to answer the question as well. So how will you use the position of public advocate to advocate for the needs of New Yorkers? And please be exact on what is your plan. So again, this is a question from the chat. How will you use the position to advocate for the needs of New Yorkers? And please be exact on what is your plan. We will start with you, Theo, and you have 60 seconds.
Well, the plan to advocate for the need of New Yorkers is very simple. First of all, you have to have a strong intake. So that means people make a complaint, there will be a follow through of the complaint. How tedious it is doesn't matter. That's how you follow up on the need of New Yorker. They tell you what problem they have with city government, with something else. You have a robust ticket system that allows for the follow-up of where it is, where's the process, what we need to engage, what city council person is in the district to engage them in the process, what community board, and try to get all these different community active engagement going on at the same time. So that's what I would do. As a computer engineer, I sent to build system that allow to do follow-up, but also to make sure privacy is
10
respected.
seconds.
Thank you, Theo. And Jamani, I'll ask you the same question. How will you use the position to advocate for the needs of New Yorkers? And please be exact on what is your plan.
Thank you. We're planning on building on the infrastructure we've put in the past 2 years. And just so folks know, there are 5 mandated public advocate powers in the charter. The first is legislative. You can introduce legislative into the city council. Second is an ombudsman. You're a go-between between the people and government. Third is a charter cop. You try to make sure that the agencies are doing the job that the charter is mandated that they do. The fourth is a pension vote. You get to vote on the pension board. And the last one, you get to appoint people to appointments like CCRB or the City Planning Commission. So we've exercised all of those. Like Theo said, you also have to have a pretty robust system to deal with people who are calling in. We have a pretty awesome constituent service team that handles those, and we can continue.
10 seconds.
The last one is the bully pulpit. It's not written anywhere, but it's very important to have someone that can raise issues that others may not.
Thank you both. And I have one more question from the chat. So many people, and I'll start again with Theo and then go to Jumaane. So many people are accruing large debts due to easy pass penalties. How can you help change this system for New Yorkers? Fair tolls. So the question is from Carmita Morgan Randall, and she asks, many people are accruing large debts due to easy pass penalties. How can you help change this system for New Yorkers? Start with you, Theo, for 60 seconds.
That's a good one. I didn't think of that one. Penalty basically is to make sure, penalty is really to ensure that you behave differently. So the question is, if you have gotten those penalty because you're poor, we should figure out how to make a clean slate, to go start again and figure it out. If you are getting penalty and you can afford them, I don't see why you shouldn't be accountable for the behavior you have. So we need to figure out on a case by case how the MTA is assessing those penalty, and sometimes those penalty could be erroneous. I've been charged, my Easy Pass has been charged several times for a car that I don't even have. So we need to look at the case by case and make sure that poverty is not something that will make those accrual go on.
Thank you. And Jamani, the same question for you from Carmita Morgan Randall. Many people are accruing large debts due to the Easy Pass penalties. How can you help change the system for New Yorkers?
I mean, it's interesting. I haven't actually heard that complaint in the 2 years we've been here. So I'd really like to get some more information about why it's being accrued and what's happening. Is it erroneous and what's happening? But somebody can reach out to the office actually at Get Help at advocate.nyc.gov, get help at advocate.nyc.gov. You can also go to advocate.nyc.gov. We have a text, and you can just call as well. All that is on the website, so we're happy to help. But I will point out, it's probably not where the direction of this question was, but we do see a disparity in transportation. And whereas you see people who drive to work, sometimes the bill isn't paid the way it should be, and no one is arrested. And I think that's correct. But we see something different when people are going and taking the train. And I think that has to do a lot with the population of who's doing which. And we want to make sure that those kind of disparities in transportation are dealt with, even as we're trying to fix whatever may be a problem with what was brought up.
Fantastic. And Jamani, I have a question for you that we asked Theo before you got on, and I want to pose it to you as well. So where were you during the height of the pandemic? So I'm talking last March, last April, last May. And if you were in New York, what did you do to help benefit the residents of the city?
I was in Brooklyn. It's been tough. I let folks know. Thanks to the therapy I've been in for the past 5 years, I'm now in a pretty healthy relationship. Recently engaged, going to be married soon, to have a stepdaughter. And actually, we moved in as the pandemic was starting, so it's kind of been baptism by fire. But I try my best to use whatever privilege I always have to help the people of the city of New York. I'm a cisgendered male. I'm a citizen, a cisgendered man. I'm a citizen. All those come with some privilege. One of the biggest privileges is actually being public advocate. And so we did whatever we could from the office to lift up the issues. I believe, and I said it at the time, that we had the wrong mayor, governor, and president for the time we were in, with the concurring pandemics of the pandemic of COVID, of the protests that were going on, and it rising in gun violence. And so if you look at my social media, I was pretty often on the streets, whether it was a protest or trying to see how we can build the mutual aid support where government was actually failing folks. And so it was sad. We actually became the epicenter of the epicenter. A lot of it was preventable. We did raise our voice, and sometimes it was heard, and that was good. Sometimes I think politics played a bigger part when you see the governor and the mayor competing for something else other than what was the best interest of the city. But we were pretty loud, we were pretty visible, and we're going to remain that way because we're not out of this yet.
I want to thank everyone for all of the questions that are coming into the Q&A. I wish I could get to all of them, but we are short on time tonight. I know, just 2.5 months away from the primary, the candidates have very busy schedules. I do want to ask you one more question, Jamani, that we got, that Theo had an opportunity to answer earlier. So what's the definition of defunding the police for you? And do you believe that the NYPD should be defunded?
These are not 60-second questions, but I will absolutely try. I think people keep trying to run away from that term, defund the police, and we shouldn't. We should grab it and really understand what it is. We really have to reshape and redefine what public safety is, and that's the main thing. I, again, invite folks to go to advocate.nyc.gov. We have a 10-point plan on reimagining what public safety looks like. Law enforcement has a definite role to play. We want to support them. We want to encourage them to do the job that they're hired to do. We want to make sure that happens with accountability and transparency, but there's a lot more to public safety and what makes a community safe. And so I think what people are referring to is last year in the budget, every other agency was defunded. And I don't think people understood that. The NYPD was one of the only ones that was actually increased. This year, again, we're seeing an increase being proposed for the police department in the tune of about 6%. And most other departments and agencies are being decreased. And so DUIC, Department of Youth and Community Development, is being decreased by 10%. The Department of Health and Human Hygiene, I see Anthony Harmon here. The Department of Education is being hit with a cut as well. So everything else is being defunded. And what we're saying is you can't send a message that the only and most important thing is our police department, because we know that other things keep communities safe. Matter of fact, the number one way to cut violent crime in half is
10 seconds.
And last year we cut summer youth jobs in half, even as we increased the NYPD. And so we just want to make sure people get the resources that are needed and communities get the resources that were needed, and that we understand that police have a job to do, but we can't equate public safety solely with policing because it has very bad results.
Thank you.
And now it's more important than ever to really send that message, because we want communities to deal with this violence that's increasing.
Well, this has really been an insightful and an informative conversation. I thank you both so much for joining us. I'll give you each 30 seconds to wrap up with a closing statement, and then I will turn it back over to the organizers. And so for the closing statement, I will begin with you, Theo. 30 seconds.
Well, I thought we had an hour together, so it's my name is Theo Chino. I'm running for public advocate. I think I'm the best qualified for the job, even though I have a lot of love for Jumaane. And I have an $11 million question for Jumaane, because everybody knows that he's looking for the higher office at the state level. So if you were to win, basically, you would trigger another $11 million public special election. So what would you take the engagement not to run for higher office? Will you complete the 4-year term that you're seeking? And that basically my closing statement in a way, because we didn't get to talk about the youth or the work to engage people like Paperboy Prince, Alex Penn, who are 18-year-old and running for citywide controller. So
Thank you, Theo. I know. We could always use more time for these conversations. Jamani, I'll turn it over to you for your 30-second closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. I apologize a little late at the beginning. And I thank you for rescheduling and having this opportunity for us to come in and present. We are at a critical juncture. We see that the state just put in a budget, and that budget was very informed by people, some who are on this call, activists and advocates who've been pushing for a very long time. See what happens when you continue to push. The city budget is about to come out in June, and we have to do the same thing there. And we have to have someone who can really push that message and get things done. I believe I've been doing that for the past almost 11 years on the city council and public advocate, and I'd love to have your vote again for this most important job. Thank you.
Thank you both to Theo and Jamani, and I will turn it over now to the organizers. Thank you so much for the young people of Harlem for putting this forum together and for inviting me to be a part of it.
thank you, Anaya.
Peace and blessings, love and light to everyone. Thank you.
Before we get started with interest voting, we really do like to thank both Theo and Jamani for being with us. It was really helpful for us to get to know these platforms. As stated, we really just wanted to share their platforms for the youth and for all audience members of the next gen to really get to know and to say that we have choices and options. And speaking of